All right, this is the Man Fused podcast. I am Kay Lee, audio producer, voice artist, sitting here with my co-host, Ben H.
What's up, guys?
Today on the Man Fused podcast, our guest, Jason Colleran, a former top-tier collegiate athlete, a biomechanics consultant for medical professionals and professional athletes, is here, and he is going to blow up the fitness industry and everything that you think you know about it. Hang out. We'll get to that in just a few seconds. The Man Fused podcast, we are now on WhatsApp. So you can join the show, you can text us, you can leave us a voice message at 770-744-5227. Of course, you can join the show through our website at manfused.com. Our guest today, Jason Colleran, who is the founder of a product, which you have now 3 patents in 45 countries. Is that what I was told the other day?
We just got our 3rd U.S. patent. We filed international patents in 46 countries.
That's impressive, buddy.
It's amazing.
Congrats on that. So the product that I'm talking about is something called the Kinetic Arm, which is a, would you call it a brace?
Brace is kind of more like an immobilizer. This is something, it's a new concept, but when you sit back and think, why have we not developed anything like this? So it's more like a dynamic stabilizer. You still have all the range. It just gives you more support at end range when your muscles have the least amount of ability to stabilize the joint.
You put it on your arm, your shoulder, right?
Yeah, you just slide your arm through, fasten it, and then it's like having an external muscular system.
It's pretty impressive. And I want to get into all that and my experience with it because you just hooked up my son with a prototype, which is pretty damn awesome. But not only can it save you from having to have surgery like Tommy John, you can still play and you don't have to spend all this money, through surgeries and then recoveries. So you have been in this business of training neurological stuff over 20 years, right?
Yeah, it's been over 20 years and well over 30 as an athlete too, so having to experience everything.
And you had bad injuries when you were younger, correct?
I've either had to rehab somebody through just about every injury you can think of, from arm injuries to having to go to Germany for major reconstructive surgeries because the healthcare here is so bad.
Is that when you ripped off your pec?
No, my pec was ripped off for 2 years. So I had a Thai fight after that, played baseball again after that, but that was for hernia surgery that they couldn't do here in the U.S.
But how did you initially rip off your pec? When someone says, I ripped off my pec, I'm just like, what?
That was under the supervision of a strength coach. So we had all these certifications. Everybody talked him up. The gym I worked at the time, anybody that had a fight coming up, it was mandatory to go through this guy's program. So they thought that, okay, he's got all these certifications, he must be great.
Right.
But it's one of the biggest problems with the fitness industry. They don't understand basic musculoskeletal mechanics. So they want us to max out, go all the way down, and that's why the pec just ripped off the bone.
Jason is actually a badass, like certified kick somebody's ass. And I don't think you would fight. You're probably the chillest guy ever as far as actually getting into a fight. You're a martial arts expert in Muay Thai, is that right?
I did
Brazilian
a good
Jiu-Jitsu.
Muay Thai and boxing, but mainly, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and submission grappling.
Yeah, he's pretty calm, cool, and collect when you talk to him.
Well, dude, what does he got to worry about?
No, he ain't got to worry about nothing. He looks
Put
like
your
a
hands
beast.
on me and you're done, bro.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so did you fight internationally? Like, you have like legit fights and stuff like that?
No, I did some in-house tournaments for striking, and then with submission grappling, just the big IBJJF ones. And I did it way back when you'd have to drive, hours to a tournament in the middle of nowhere just by yourself, just show up and just go at it. And now it's a lot more organized now with a lot more tournaments, but yeah, it's evolved quite a bit.
Was that like Hoist Gracie, like more towards the start of like some of those like initial characters that I can remember?
Not back that far, okay. But the place I train at now, Alliance, they go back to those roots. Jacare grew up with the Gracies, so it's pretty cool to have that lineage with the training.
That's awesome.
Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, BJJ, right?
Right.
As it's called, is really gained a lot of popularity for both male and females of late. And it's really fun. I mean, but it's tough, dude. I mean, that's a really tough thing. I want to get Jack into it. I want to get my son into jiu-jitsu. He's 4 now. When should we get him going?
I'd get him going now. I mean, it's an incredible activity and skill set for kids because, I mean, mentally and as far as like neurological development, constantly evolving equation with an infinite amount of variables.
chess.
It's like an elevated chess game where every time something shifts, you've got a whole new puzzle you got to figure out. So for kids, it's incredible. And then there's the self-defense aspect and confidence. But the thing I like the most is you're humbled every day on the mat.
Yeah.
You're never going to be the best in the world.
Or in the room, probably. I mean,
Right.
like, there's always going to be someone else walking in, I'm sure.
And you're a brown belt Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, is that right?
Yes.
That's pretty badass. What's the next step from that? Is it brown then black, or does it go like brown, blue, or?
Next step is black.
So you're almost there, black belt status.
Almost there. Almost there.
My brother-in-law, my wife's brother, I think he is now black belt. And when he got to that point, he's been training in like jiu-jitsu for as long as I can remember. But when they gave him his black belt, everyone whipped him with their belts.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Old school places still do that. A lot of
Yeah.
them don't because, our culture's become pretty soft. And
The
that might be a deterrent.
wussification. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So some places still do that.
Bunch of pussies.
If you're not at a place that whips you when you get promoted,
Yeah.
you should leave.
Yeah.
Yep.
In talking with you a little bit, you had said some pretty profound things to me just when I visited your gym, your workout center. It's Elite Fitness, which when I was in there, I was like, man, if I worked out here, you'd turn into a beast.
Yeah.
You were saying something about how stretching, which we've been taught to do through, every form of workout platform,
Right.
to do before or after, and even on your off days. And you had said that stretching is horrible for you.
Yeah, so there's a lot of studies with objective data showing that it decreases your force output. And if muscles stabilize joints, you're now decreasing that muscle or those muscles' ability to stabilize a joint. So I always say mobility without stability is vulnerability. And then with some of the positions you're trying to crank these limbs into, you're actually causing impingement issues. So now in baseball, there's a problem with hip labrum tears, but you got to think about it. After all the years of stretching your hamstrings, why aren't they hanging down behind your knees? Because first of all, muscles don't actually stretch, and muscles tighten up for a reason. Your brain's not playing a joke on you when you're sleeping, saying, you know what, I'm going to play a joke on you and tighten that up or tie that in a knot. It happens for a reason. So it's a compensation or compensatory mechanism because your brain wants to tighten up that area because it knows you're not stable in that area. So then we're always told that, okay, if you're tight, you have to stretch. So that's addressing the symptom, but notice the symptom keeps coming back. So that's a big problem with the fitness industry and especially the healthcare industry, and physical therapy is so far behind. But it's really something that, should be taken out. And there's a lot better and more efficient ways to train and spend that time.
So someone who can't touch their toes, like initially when they wake up, maybe they did a hard leg day, right? And your legs are they're sore. Typically when you stretch, there is kind of it's uncomfortable a little bit. I guess it depends on how far you stretch, but you feel a little looser after you do.
And then you can touch your toes.
And then you can get a little lower. When I think about it in my head, I'm like, well, it kind of feels good as long as you're not taking it too far. What would you recommend in place? So like when you are tight, you can't touch your toes because your muscles are tight. If stretching isn't good, what would you suggest to do?
It's not to damn stretching completely. There is a place for it. But if you follow up with positional isometrics afterwards to put the tension back into those muscles that you just shut down. So that's something big with like dry needling, cupping, Graston Rolfing, ART, where you're really just beating the crap out of the muscles because they're tight. You're potentially causing more damage. But why would we assume that if we shut down that symptom, that automatically the other ones are going to turn on? Because the brain is pretty smart. It's trying to orchestrate a solution for a movement all the time, and it knows what's available and what's not. So a compensation pattern is a good thing until you fix the problem. But back to like the touching the toes, if that's your goal, then yeah, you might need to stretch to get there. Like the sit and reach test that's still done in schools and probably still in the military. You got to think, what are we checking? Not only the hamstrings, but also trunk flexion. So if you have a gut, that's in the way. Shoulder protraction, motion there, how long your fingernails are. So there's a lot of things at play. So it's pretty inaccurate, everything we're doing.
So how do you feel about yoga?
I don't feel about yoga.
You don't you're not a big fan.
Ben loves hot yoga.
I did back in the day. I used to do a lot of hot.
Until the guy keyed your car.
I did. I got it. Yeah.
Ben had a stalker.
There was a little crush going on.
Yeah. A guy used to, just to recap for you probably didn't hear this episode yet.
He liked
Jason.
when I got in the downward dog.
Yeah, this guy used to position himself in the gym
exactly.
in all these weird positions over Ben's face and wouldn't give him the time of day on this one occasion. And the guy stood up in the middle of class and made eye contact with Ben and grabbed his yoga mat and stormed out the door.
I mean, look, I don't have any problem with homosexual people, but personally, I don't like my mouth.
The pose of the day.
And then Ben came out and his M5 was keyed.
Yeah.
Yeah, Duke keyed his car.
Which was upsetting,
to
say the least.
Yeah.
That's a little upsetting.
Well, he was upset too. You hurt him, Ben.
Obviously, my lack of attention toward him was a little disappointing. Wasn't what he expected.
You shouldn't have let him on.
I think it's like a goal for gay guys, though.
Let me turn this straight
turn
man.
this straight guy gay or something like that.
He's married to a woman, but I'm going to turn him.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So that's why he's staring at you all awkward. You're indifferent about yoga?
So it really depends on the goal and how it's done. A lot of guys get injured doing yoga because of things like downward dog. If we don't have this mobility already, and then we try to use a large percentage of our body weight to force that position, not only force that position, but hold it for an extended period of time, we're causing impingement with the shoulder.
Yeah.
So you can get injured doing it. And I've had clients come in for, the manual muscle testing, and they say, "Oh, I'm really trying to get to this pose." And I say, "Why? Do you get like a medal? They throw a party? You get a yoga trophy? Are they going to take a picture of you?" Right? So I told them, I said, "Listen, here's the best way for you to get all the mobility you need. I want you to go out on Peachtree Industrial and jump in front of a bus. You can break every joint and you can twist up into a pretzel and you will win yoga.
Yeah,
you will be the yoga champion."
Yeah.
Yeah, that'll be it. You're the champion and you won't even be there to experience it. Well, you will, but you'll be in a body cast maybe. And some of your clients, Matt Ryan, used to be Atlanta's own Matt Ryan, right? They traded him. I haven't really kept up with football so far this year.
I don't either. Yeah, he came in years ago. We've had some good ones come in.
Charles Barkley, Antonio
Excellent.
Silva, because he's a Brazilian fighter.
Yeah, he was in the UFC for a while. We've had a lot of
Silva was a beast.
Yeah, he
dude.
was.
Yeah.
The spider.
Oh no, we didn't have
No,
him.
it wasn't a
That's
Silva.
Anderson Silva.
We had Bigfoot Silva.
Yeah, it's
We've
Bigfoot.
had some multiple-time jiu-jitsu world champions like Leo Nogueira and Bruno Ferzato, and we had Davi Ramos in. But working with those guys, it's interesting because there's so many past injuries and so many training considerations that you have to think about.
Right.
So it's a lot to take into account.
So when you worked with them and you kind of told them your stance, had they ever seen anybody like you before? The way that, you view, the current state of our fitness industry and a lot of the medical industry and how we're trying to treat the problem. Were they kind of blown away when, after speaking with you and your thoughts on it?
It was a big kind of shock to them because one of the biggest problems with the fitness industry, and especially like strength and conditioning, the strength and conditioning world has turned into who has the cutest set and rep scheme of heavy barbells and chucking medicine balls, which is kind of like being a mechanic with a hammer and a screwdriver. Like those are tools. It doesn't mean they're good for everything. So if they go train with somebody else, I mean, in the fitness world, everybody's got an ego, right? They want to beat you down. These guys are already getting beat up and, their bodies are pretty torn up from training. So with me, we're going to use machines. We're going to precisely apply force. We're going to do isometrics. Whereas if they go somewhere else, they feel like they have to throw up, pass out, or die to get a good workout. But all you're doing is just beating them down and shutting them down more neurologically and fatiguing them. And then their training's not going to be as efficient. But that's one of the biggest problems with the fitness industry. It's a giant crock of shit.
Yeah, and I want to echo that because, so can a guy like me come and train at your gym, for
Absolutely.
example?
We have people that have never worked out before in the same class as a professional athlete.
That's amazing. So, because I've struggled since I got out of the military. I was in a really bad car accident. It's the reason I got out of the military. I've had a lot of past injuries and stuff like that. And dude, I've hired trainers, I've hired dietitians, I've hired freaking yoga people. I mean, I have done everything possible. And literally, I'm not blaming them. It's obviously my, it's my responsibility, right? But it's been a very difficult road, man. And there's so much information out there in the fitness world that is so contradictory. You go to one guy and he tells you one thing, and then you go to another guy and he tells, "Oh no, we don't. That's wrong. Do this instead." Or, especially with diet, intermittent fasting, and calorie counting and meal prepping, and do you do cardio? Don't you do cardio? Do you stretch? Do you not? When you're young, you can do it all, right? I mean, when you're in your 20s, you're in your teens, you're a young athlete, everything works. But when you get into your 40s and 50s and you start getting a little older, you want to stay fit, you want to stay lean. I want to look like this guy. How do I do that without literally I get hurt?
That's one of the biggest problems with the fitness industry is when you go in, they just have this assumption that everything's working.
Yeah.
So whatever compensation pattern you might have or old injuries, that haven't been addressed, and you start to apply load, whether it's through weights, could be yoga. There's a lot of different ways to apply force, but you're just going to make that problem worse until you have the blowout. At my place, what we do, we can start out with an assessment on the table to find out what range of motion limitations you have if there is a neuromuscular issue. But you go to another place. I used to manage 16 trainers at another gym. One of the contests was who could sleep with the most new members. So that tells you about the fitness industry.
Yes.
We need to get that guy on.
Yeah. It was a nightmare.
Do you get a plaque?
Well, they got cars, keyed tires, slash gum under the door handle. But
yeah, that's not good.
Was there
business.
a girl that was on the sales team that was participating here? Because she would have obviously won a competition like that.
That's a good question. I just tried to stay as far away as possible from it.
Yeah,
but
that's pretty sleazy, though.
That is sleazy, dude.
We can get into what goes on in Atlanta too if you want.
No, that's what we're talking about. Light it up, Jason.
Let's do it.
But another thing, they would have competitions who could make the most clients throw up in a day.
Come on.
So yeah, it's all about egos. Look at their Instagram pages. Trainers, for most people, it's a fallback career because they couldn't hold a real job. They didn't want rules. So that's why the turnover is so high. It's a giant fallback career. They think, oh man, I can get a weekend certification. I can meet people. I can make contacts. No.
I can build a business.
Please stop. Yeah. And then, they either get fired for stealing or, sleeping around. But look at their Instagram pages. These shirtless selfies straight out of the shower.
These shirtless boy whores.
It's unreal, the level of insecurity with these people. And
it's a huge point.
People don't realize too, guys get ab etching done. All these girls have all this lipo. So it's this kind of pornification of the fitness industry that isn't attainable. And it's setting people up for failure from the get-go. But then because there's no barriers to entry for these trainers, I've had a lot of guys come in, or girls, that, they've got a master's, they got a doctorate in exercise phys, exercise science. Do you know how many classes there are with practical application?
Zero.
So imagine going through mechanic school and you don't turn a single wrench. You just look at a book and see how many foot-pounds of torque it is, and what order to tighten down your intake manifold, what the timing should be, but you don't step out onto the garage floor.
Yeah, there's no real world experience there.
So they think, oh, I was an athlete, I know what worked for me. Well, everybody's not you. It's like I do these assessments and people say, oh, I bought Arnold's book. So do you have his genetics or his steroids? Because if not, you could throw the book in the trash. It's not going to help you.
Right.
That's why you get so much contradictory information, because the more polarizing their comment, the more attention it's going to get. With these influencers and people on social media, they have to keep pumping out content, and it's really terrible, but they have to do it to try to stay relevant. So the more time you see them pumping out content and putting things out, the less time they're with a client actually doing what they claim to be doing.
Absolutely. And the less time they're studying, actually trying to educate themselves on becoming better. You went and did you go and get the typical, trainer certification at some point?
I haven't had a current one since 2004.
Like a badge of honor.
Well, it's his certificate, right? Because you have to technically have at least that, right?
No.
You could just call yourself a trainer?
You don't even have to be certified, but you can go online and get one for like $50.
Oh, that's like you could be a pastor.
Like a minister.
Yeah, you could be a minister.
I'm ordained.
Yeah, you are.
I've married people. I went online and got my certificate.
Yeah.
All I had to do was fill out my name and email.
Same thing.
So if I wanted to become a trainer right now, like you're saying, I could get one and go into a gym and start barking orders at clients?
Man, all you need is a social media account. That's it. Then all of a sudden you're
insane.
I
thought there was a little more to it.
No, but that's what I'm saying is even the people that went through and got the degrees, they're still not qualified to train somebody.
Well, right. And as you just said, yours hasn't been current in 2004, but obviously you have continued beyond what 99.9% of everyone else continues to educate themselves. You see what the problems are and, what the current state of trainers and the medical industry is doing and being like, well, this is wrong. It's really hard to change after you've been thinking this way. And is this global? Like they do the same stuff in other countries typically, or is there better or worse?
I'm not sure about other countries, but I know here they did try to pass legislation a couple times. They talked about it. But after I went through muscle activation techniques and have since then developed another muscle testing modality that we did on the table when you came in, that and then learning about the physics of resistance mechanics. So that's kind of the direction I went. But I'll have physical therapists rent out space, or I'll get a lot of clients from PTs. And, to ask a physical therapist or a doctor about exercise, I mean, think about it. I hope they weren't trying to learn about fitness when they should have been studying medicine.
Yeah.
Right.
And then they're sitting there out of shape trying to give you advice. Really?
That's one of the biggest things to me that I see is like you got a lot of people in the fitness industry that actually aren't in great shape. And a lot of them are really injured. I mean, I see all these CrossFit guys like online.
Don't say that word in here.
And, is that a bad word?
I wasn't allowed to use it.
But that's a big industry, right? I mean, the CrossFit industry is something that, I mean, anywhere you go, you see people like running around a building or something like that, and they're out in the parking lot jumping around doing jumping jacks or on rowers or whatever they're doing. And, it's like for the most part, I mean, I've done some CrossFit classes before. I hate that shit, dude.
I kind of like it.
It freaking sucks. I don't like it at all.
I kind of like that. Well, maybe it's not the CrossFit.
It's like that Orange Theory thing. I hate that
I just
shit.
I like to work. So if I'm in and I'm training, if it's 45 minutes, I want to work my ass off for 45 minutes. I don't want to throw up, and be like, tear something, but I want to push.
You want to be in the zone.
I want to push myself because I feel so good after I do. So, I mean, that's, typically.
Well, I want to push myself too. I mean, I like that too. I know what you mean, but I don't want to get hurt though.
Well, I don't want to get hurt. Well, I mean, I think you allow yourself. I mean, if you allow somebody to push you that hard where okay, this is going to be a little much, then I would dumb it down to a point that I thought I could handle to where I don't tear something. I just like that nonstop.
Yeah, but then it's the peer pressure, bro, when the clock is ticking.
Well, yeah.
And you're like, and they're like, well, you get that heart rate up,
Yeah,
and you're like,
that's
you're
when
not
I
in the
work out.
green
That's
zone.
what I'm trying to do is get my heart rate up. You work out currently?
Yeah. I've had a lot of injuries over the years through sports, so it's just slow and precise. I don't try to win anymore.
Do you get your heart rate up? Do you run, you jog, or is it?
If you see me running, my car died, my mountain bike tires were flat, and I ran out of ammo.
Okay.
And you're freaking
you better
lean,
start
bro.
running too.
I mean,
you better
this
start
guy,
running.
I don't know if you can tell through the camera, but he's freaking lean.
Oh, no, he's jacked.
He's freaking yoked.
So then how do you maintain your fit? Just eating?
No. Oh, man.
It's just genetics.
So my wife has to keep me from, I used to get pizza like 3 times a night or 3 times a week.
Pizza.
Nice.
Pizza. I'd have cake before bedtime.
Yeah.
I just love food. But if you think about it, when cardio, you get your heart rate up, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do you get your heart rate up during strength training?
Yeah.
Okay.
Seems like it.
There's your cardio. But
Yeah.
I think a big portion is, getting on the mat and doing the jiu-jitsu and grappling.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the cardio. But, with all these trendy classes, Orange Theory, the other ones you were talking about, I call my place Red Conclusion. So why is it still a theory? Have we not gone through the scientific method and figured it out? But if you think about it, cardio is muscle wasting. So on one end of the spectrum, you got powerlifters and bodybuilders. On the other end, you've got runners that are skinny fat. So you've let all your muscle atrophy to the point where they're not functioning how they should as shock absorbers and absorbing force to now the stress goes to the bones. So whenever you hear runners talk about, oh, running's great for you, you just need a pair of shoes and this. But I've been having this knee pain. It always goes to something like that.
That's right.
Running is absolutely terrible for you.
Really?
And shoes are actually wrecking people.
Wow.
You got to think, what do we do for hundreds or thousands or however many years before Nike came along with this piece of plastic?
Right.
God, I hope we weren't walking or running, right? And then with the fitness industry, it came out with barefoot running. So I had, at the time, all my friends were, trainers and instructors. They started wearing these barefoot minimalist shoes.
They look like Ninja Turtle shoes or something.
Yeah, it looked like little slippers.
Yeah.
Is that with the ones with the toes?
The toe,
the Vibrams. They started getting ligament tears and stress fractures in their feet because for all this time you've had the shoe absorbing force, and then you take that crutch away, and you've got to absorb all the weight of your body crashing down and pushing off on a platform that hasn't been conditioned to handle that because you've been wearing shoes that are limiting motion. So anything in the medial arch, that's, plantar fasciitis, if you've got an arch support and you take that away and then you start trying to run or walk, you're going down.
Wow.
So there's a lot of trends that come through. They come and go. And it's pretty interesting to see the injuries that happen and kind of who holds on to it and who clings to it to try to make money. But That's all the fitness industry is.
And you had a very unsavory view of CrossFit.
Yeah, I was going to say, how do you feel about CrossFit?
Yeah, how do you feel about CrossFit? Please tell us, Jason.
It's kind of like a fitness street gang. Like people just want to belong to something, right? I think pack animals. If you Google CrossFit pec tears, you'll see they had a CrossFit Open where they had, I don't remember if it was 30-something or 50-something pec tears. So that tells you all you need to know.
Is that like a competition, a CrossFit Open?
Yeah, they were having a competition. But to me, it's kind of like being the fastest at cutting your grass or washing your car. You're going to do a shit job. You're really going to do a shit job. But now you're adding loads, so you're putting yourself in these vulnerable positions. And then if you Google CrossFit peeing, these women just let loose and pee all over the box or the floor. Is that somewhere you want to train in? Not.
Why do they do that, though?
Because they're worked so hard.
They say it's cool. Like maybe they have a pelvic floor issue, but still, like, call a timeout.
They like
the bathroom, put it where.
I don't think they like it. I mean,
I don't know. Some get pretty weird. Have you seen the founder of CrossFit?
No, but I'm going to Google him now.
Google Greg Glassman and tell me if that's someone you would want to look like or perform like. This is going to make people so mad.
So Greg Glassman.
Oh, hey, Greg. Wow.
And women are peeing on the floor because they're so exhausted.
Greg looks like a
pervert,
a molester.
Absolutely, 100%.
He's
like
disgusting.
Jared, the Subway guy.
He's giving that rapey vibe.
Yeah, he does. He's got a rape face.
He's got a rape face.
Yeah,
he's got the rape vibe.
He's rich, isn't he?
He's really capitalized, and I think it was the original manual. So I feel like I can talk about it because I've been through the level 1 certification, not by my own choosing. I had partners at the time. They wanted to be an affiliate. To me, if you're going to have a product, you should be confident to put your name on it.
For sure.
Right.
I'm not opening up a business with somebody else's name if I, claim to be good at what I do. There's that part. I always ask people, why don't you put your own name on your business? So I think, again, there's no barriers to entry. So it's a cheap way that they could start a business with minimal equipment. But again, it's like fixing a car. They've got, 1, 2, 3 tools. But what if somebody's injured? What if they have some kind of compensation pattern you don't know about? And we've had people come in and tell us about their injuries, a broken neck, people maxing out the first day they go in there. Why on earth would you feel the need to max out? Because if you get it, I guess you can brag like beating a level 12 on Legend of Zelda or something. I mean, it's like a video game. Who cares? Yeah. There's always somebody stronger. And if you don't get it, you get injured and then you can't work out.
Yeah, and then you're immobilized.
And then they're probably going to still keep charging you. And then,
Well, I'm glad to hear this because I have never liked CrossFit. So now I know that it's garbage.
Your instinct was correct.
That's right. Exactly.
Your initial gut of telling you that this is garbage and you don't need to be doing it is accurate.
So martial arts is something that you're really proficient in and that you do a lot of. Do you train daily? Is it 2-3 times a week, or how often do you hit the mat and do some grappling or some BJJ?
I try to get 3 days a week in. That way you keep learning. In a good week, if I have time, I'll get in 4. But it's just incredible, the amount of learning.
And it's a pretty intimidating thing. I mean, when I think about it, because I'd really like to do it, and I actually signed up at Alliance.
Yeah, I was about to say, didn't he refer you?
Yeah,
and you went there, and then you never went back.
Well, no, I went a couple times. But then I moved.
Yeah.
And so then it was just like, I don't know. I just kind of like didn't.
Are they still charging you?
No. I mean, I did.
He's our greatest customer.
I know. I paid out my contract as I signed up for. I wasn't going. When I did go, everyone was very welcoming.
And
everyone was really cool. Right? No, not even so much, man.
Not like kicked your ass like they beat you up. It's an exhausting workout.
It's exhausting, the things that just the positions that you go in, just the warm up.
Oh, I'll bet.
Just the warm up exercises were. I was smoked by the time we got done doing the warm up.
My brother-in-law, when he'd come to Atlanta just for for a week or so, he'd find a gym and he'd go and he was like, and work with somebody. And he was like, today, we worked on pressure, ability to use your body's weight and apply pressure on top of someone else. I mean, it's just exhausting. It's hard to breathe.
You can have a 160-pound guy feel like he's 300 pounds.
Yeah.
It's incredible. And then before I got to Alliance, I thought, I'm pretty good. And they've got Leo Nogueira, 3-time or more super heavyweight black belt world champion. Man, I've never been someone's bitch like that. And it was so effortless for him.
And is he a big guy or is he smaller than you? I mean,
about the same size, but he can tell you what he's going to do and you can't stop it.
Really?
It's ridiculous.
So with all your experience up to this point, you couldn't figure out a way to stop it?
Nothing. You can't even start it.
Oh, wow.
He's already 3 steps ahead of you.
At least.
So is that because, I mean, how much more, does this guy have a ton more experience? Or is it some people, just like chess, they just get it faster? It seems like their training has just clicked. Even with chess, it's like you learn how to play, and then it's like some people it just starts to click, and they start to be able to make these moves, and, those variables work in their favor. Is it sometimes like that?
No, it's a lot of time.
No,
I mean,
not at all.
Not at all.
Not even.
You're wrong.
Way. No way. You got to put in at a decent training facility, school, academy, whatever you want to call it. I mean, you're looking at probably 10 years for a black belt.
Wow.
How many hours roughly does that equate to? Like,
probably 10,000.
10 years. Well, 10 years for a black belt. I think that's what my brother-in-law did.
If you're training like 3-4 days a week, that's probably what you're looking at. I mean, I've been doing it. I did it. I'm probably going on year 14 or 15. I mean, I had a couple breaks from injuries and things like that, but.
So you could be at a brown belt for years and years.
Oh yeah, you're at each level for a good bit. Before this was purple belt. That was, I think, 6 or 7 years. So a lot of time to get competitions in before progressing, but it's a lot.
And how do they determine, okay, you have put in your time? Do you have to, like, fight somebody? Is that?
So there's kind of, I guess you could say, like a kind of a hobbyist way and like a competitor way. So the belt promotion would depend on if you're not competing and it's just kind of a hobby and you really, like doing it, but you don't feel like you're a competitor, then it kind of goes off how many classes you've attended. So not only the class you've attended, but you'll have to test out. But for me, I was always a competitor. So, you compete, you win, and then you don't have to test out. You just get the next belt level.
The competition itself is the test.
Yeah, pretty much.
And, I have to say, too, like my experience with it was really neat because I've never been in a sport or activity like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu when you go in as someone like, I'm not even a white belt. I had no belt. You know what I'm saying? And
you're below belt.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't even have an outfit, and, but I was, training with blue belts and purple belts. And, it's kind of part of their training is to take the newbies and, teach them a couple things. And so I thought that was kind of cool, man, because like everybody seems super humble in that sport.
It's a really cool culture because you'll see kids compete. They'll walk up, shake hands, go at it hard, and then at the end, shake hands or hug. And
right.
I mean, even guys I've competed against, and we're trying to rip each other's heads off. We're going, 0 to 100 real fast.
Yeah.
Afterwards, hey man, thanks, great job.
Thanks for hurting me.
Yeah. Then we're friends on social media and we keep in touch. You see them at tournaments. But my wife was surprised when she went to a tournament. She's like, wow, everybody, if they bump into you, they say excuse me or they're so polite. It's just a different culture. So that's a place you want to train, not like
for sure
an MMA gym where there's egos and people are getting hurt and they got something to prove. So it's there's definitely differences in that. But Atlanta's like a jiu-jitsu mecca.
Really?
It's incredible, yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of really good places here. And it seems like they all kind of started out in one or two places way back when I worked at Knuckle Up. There were, all the guys that have facilities now, we were all kind of in the same place, and then they all kind of left and, started their own. And then you had Jacare with Alliance that was on Roswell Road right by there.
Right.
And they've always kind of stayed independent. So it's been pretty cool to see it evolve in this city because now you've got so many high-level black belts that you can learn from.
That's awesome.
There's a place up near our home, Kaylee.
Is there?
Up in the area we live.
Is it? Karate.
No, you remember like on Napoleon Dynamite, that karate?
Rex Kwon Do.
Yeah.
Rex Kwon Do. Karate.
Bringing that up, going through the training, like the weapons training, you'd have these guys. I mean, they're SF, they're operators, SWAT guys, and you go around the room. They're like, I can run a gun, I can do this, and then they'll say, I trained at this dojo, and they're talking about. But you see real fast, their kung fu is no good.
Pardon my ignorance. What was that term you just said? Run a gun.
They're really good with different weapon systems. So whether it's handguns, rifles, something bigger, they've had extensive training with that. But as soon as you start in an entanglement, which is real life, I mean, you're not starting with equal initiative. It's unequal initiative. And you might have me wrapped up from behind. You might have a hand on my handgun.
You might just have a jump on you just from a timing standpoint.
And that's how it's going to go down. But you'll see that these guys, beforehand they'd talk about, they did Tai Chi or they did Krav Maga, things like that. I mean, in this, you'd fight it out in a gravel parking lot.
Yeah.
Or you're in a vehicle fighting it out, and you see real quick these guys they didn't learn that.
Wow.
So they have a great skill set, but that's how well jiu-jitsu transfers. So it was really interesting to see that firsthand and get to experience it, whether it's in a gravel parking lot or in a vehicle or around a vehicle. But you see real fast just the basics, they're not there.
Most fights end up on the ground, right? Is that, in theory. And so being able to control, okay, it's going to end up on the ground anyway. I'd probably say most of the time, that's when you're going to lose, is because you're trained to know what to do, right?
You hope. If you're out in a social setting,
right.
Biggest two things: stay upright, stay conscious.
Gotcha.
If you get hit with a haymaker, you're screwed anyway.
Yeah.
But you'd never want to take it to the ground because someone might stomp your head or, do something like that. So
right.
It's interesting how many variables go into play, but like in those classes, you'd have a certain situation. You might have a 2-on-1, and you got the live sim rounds, which, don't tickle, but it was great. But yeah, it's interesting how many variables there are.
Limitless variables.
Yeah. Well, and that's another level to kind of, I guess, Jason's like badassery, is he's also training these spec op guys and these SWAT team guys. I think you told me one time something in regards to like vehicles and like having a gun pulled on you in a vehicle or something like that. You're running these guys that, are out here protecting our country, or they're protecting our safety as law enforcement officers. You're training these guys how to kick ass on a higher level too.
Yeah, the couple classes I went through and was able to help out with, there was edge weapons, so that's, weapons of opportunity. So in that one, I got pulled aside by 2 Delta guys, and they were asking for help with a manual for a new division of Homeland Security where they have to travel without weapons. So there was a couple places they got stuck, so getting to help out. And they even said, they were like, look, at best, we're like shitty white belts.
Wow.
But again, they've got an incredible skill set. So it was pretty cool to be able to help out with that. Then another one was fighting with handguns 0 to 5 feet. And then there were vehicle combatives where you're fighting inside a vehicle and then you're fighting around a vehicle as well. So it's like jiu-jitsu in a cube.
Can you elaborate a little bit more on what you said they needed help with?
Edged weapons. Knife could be a screwdriver, just kind of whatever's available.
They needed help with manuals?
They were putting together a
training system?
Training manual. Mm-hmm. And they had just a couple gaps on areas they were getting stuck on. Like if you're pressed against the wall and somebody has a lower base, they're like, we're kind of getting stuck here. So then I could show them, all right, you're going to reach down, grab their chin, rip it up, because where the head goes, the body goes. So getting to fill in the gaps with little things like that. And then with, transitions, if you're having to take them down, especially with a weapon in play, because you can be a great jiu-jitsu practitioner or martial artist, but as soon as you throw that weapon in play, it completely changes everything.
Yeah, big time.
You're trying to protect yourself from that weapon, right? So you've got to have all hands on stopping that weapon in whichever way you can.
Imagine fighting in a car. That's a whole different level. Like you said, like in a cube, but there's car seats, there's all kinds of stuff. Somebody pulls a knife on you, like maybe you're in the driver's seat. Somebody in the back seat, like, tries to cut your throat.
That's essentially what we did. You start out sitting next to each other. You've got your training Glock with the sim rounds, and then you've got your training knife, and you have padded helmets on, so you have a face shield. And then he says, go, and you fight it out in the vehicle.
And see who can shoot each other, kind of a thing?
Shoot each other, stab each other, but ultimately subdue. So you got to look for something to grab. I put my foot on the dashboard.
That's rowdy.
Posted over into the driver's seat. I was able to pin him and start shooting from there. But then there were other scenarios where you start in the vehicle, you have to unbelt, debus, get out. As soon as the door's shut, you're trying to shoot each other around the vehicle.
Any which way you can.
You'll see quickly what doesn't work. But then there were some other situations where, if you've got an underhook and an overhook and you're pressed against the vehicle and you're both trying to get to your weapon, from there you've got to know what you're doing, and it's got to be kind of instinctive.
That level of training for people who are in this field, training's everything. To be able to see in training like a real life scenario helps you so much when you get to a real life scenario, doesn't it?
It's got to be automatic. If you have to think about it.
Yeah, subconsciously. You have to be ready, like, subconsciously. Like, you instinctively, like, at that point, okay, you know what you're going to do. And that still doesn't even ensure that you're going to be successful. It just might up the chances of it.
Yeah,
right?
and then there's the kind of criminal psychology element of it. If you're wanting to prevent that altercation, drawing attention, things like that, or asking a question so it kind of distracts them and they think about it. And then you've got, that split second to react.
Right, yeah.
So, yeah, it was a lot
maybe
of
a little
situations.
whistle.
Yeah.
They're like, what the
Yeah.
fuck? And then you're like, pow!
Maybe you just randomly moan. Ooh. All of this is super informative. Do you feel that you're beefing with a lot of trainers? Have you been going toe to toe with some of these people? Or do you have some that come to you going, listen, I see that stuff's really kind of messed up. Can you help me? And you offer or take anybody under your wing and try to help them, be better at what they're doing if they do have a book of business?
I always try to help as much as I can. So I've helped teach a lot of orthopedic surgeons, chiropractors, physical therapists about resistance mechanics, neuromuscular system, musculoskeletal, and kind of how to use those tools. Because I'll have them come in and say, "Oh, I don't use those machines. Those aren't functional." I said, "Okay, I guess all I do is dysfunctional then." They're like, no, you know what I mean. I'm like, no, I don't, because doing a wood chopper, do you put your groceries away like that? You just throw the shit up in the cabinet, up and across.
Right.
But it's like, what? I don't know why they have this.
They're like, yeah, if you're going to be putting something on a shelf, this could help you.
It blows my mind. So back in my younger days, you'd comment and you'd go through a class. You're armed with all this knowledge. You think you're going to change the world. And I'd finish some emails. Now my wife won't let me post on some social media, and she says I need a filter. But I'd finish the email with, "Hey, if you've really got a serious problem, come by. I'll meet you out back." But since then, calm down. So now it's I just try to stay in my happy bubble. But seeing what everybody else is doing, people are more concerned with proving what they believe to be true than actually learning the truth. Because if I tell you,
that's a big
hey,
right there.
Your fried chicken balls suck, you're not going to stop selling them.
No, not if it's my bread and butter.
You're going to keep selling them because it's what's making you money, right?
Right.
And then they're just trying to grind out as many sessions as they can. But I think it's a John Wooden quote. It's what you learn after you already know everything that counts. I was a trainer for 10 years before I went to one of these classes, and I thought, holy shit, I've never heard of these muscles. I don't even know what I'm doing here. I don't know if I belong here. For the first 2 months, that's how I felt. But again, I'd done it for 10 years. I'd managed. I was doing some on the education side, but that's why the fitness industry really is just a giant crock of shit. There's different business models. There's the upsell model where you've got the kind of smaller box gyms where it's $9 or $20 a month. So they got the upsell model.
The 24-hour ones, maybe like that. You get
Some
a
of those.
key and you can access, whenever.
Mm-hmm. But with the upsell model, it's a cheap membership, but then they're trying to sell you on the training. So they'll get these trainers they can pay, next to nothing that come out of like an LA or somewhere like that. And then they're charging, a lot more money because they look like a boutique place or it's private training. But really the skill, and I always say, just because you've been in kindergarten 10 years, it doesn't make you a 10th grader. There's a gym in Atlanta, I won't mention the name, but it was full of trainers that were, that left my place because they either owed me money or I asked them to leave because what they were doing just wasn't safe and I didn't want that liability. Right. So they all kind of ended up at one place, but that's the cool, trendy place.
Right.
So it's really, as long as they can.
Probably lifetime.
As long as they can hold a conversation, people think, oh, they're a great trainer. Are they really? But that's the only thing people go off of. And then you see on their bios, they'll say, my philosophy. You don't get to have a philosophy. This is science. So back to what you asked about beefing with trainers, everything I say I can back up with research articles that show objective data, or I can show you, with a digital dynamometer. So I can prove everything I say. Again, that's the thing. The turnover rate is so high. The fitness industry is like a revolving door. And you see these guys at celebrity trainers. What does that mean? Does that mean you train celebrity? I got voicemails from Sylvester Stallone. I big leagued him. I'm not driving to train you. I don't care who you are.
Mm-hmm. Sly.
You want to come here and train? I'm not driving down into Buckhead to train you at some hotel gym. I mean, you look at these Atlanta trainers, they'd be all over it just to say they did it.
Right. And then post on, Instagram or whatever and, just finished another round with Sly.
Yeah. And
that dog.
But then you see him in these nightclubs like mooching on somebody's VIP section, just hammered. But that's what it is. That's what the fitness industry is here.
Yeah.
It's so bad in Atlanta. It's absolutely terrible. It's not much better anywhere else. It's just here, there's so many more gyms and it's a big city. So with it being kind of the Hollywood of the South.
There's a lot of money to be made, and that's what they're preying on.
Preying is the perfect word for it.
Oh, yeah.
Because people don't know any better. Them saying they have all these years of experience, or at one place they were saying, oh, this guy was a strength coach at a college. The Chicago White Sox just put out that statement saying they asked their athletes not to sprint hard to first base because of all the hamstring injuries. Fire your whole staff. You're all absolute shit.
That's crazy.
If you can't prevent preventable injuries, especially at that level, why on earth would your athletes not be able to sprint in a straight line without getting injured? Because of this, it's ridiculous.
We need to upgrade these old people.
Hundreds of millions of dollars invested in these athletes, and you can't keep them healthy enough to run in a straight line. But the reason is all these mobility crazes.
Yeah.
So all the heavy squats, deadlifts, the symmetrically loaded lifting, we're causing everything to tighten up.
Right.
So then that gives birth to this big mobility craze. So now you can pay for that. So they want you to stretch and beat the crap out of your muscles. It's like, well, the strength program you just did caused these problems, and now you're trying to undo them, but then you're going to reinforce them when you go back in with your trainer that wants you to lift heavy stuff. So it's kind of cyclical until, people get bored or injured.
Right.
Yeah.
What inspired you to create, at first, the Perfect Arm, or is it Kinetic Arm, or is that two different products?
We started with the Perfect Arm and then went to our first big trade show. And I saw next to us there was the Perfect Mound, the Perfect Throw, the Perfect Pitch. And I thought, oh, damn, put ourselves in the same basket with other products that are completely different and I may not entertain,
right?
Seeing how they work. So it was just thinking, why do we not have any protective devices for the throwing arm? Or with tennis, with volleyball, nothing to protect the arm. We've got, batting gloves, we've got helmets, we've got elbow protectors. Why are we not reinforcing this externally? And then it made me realize our healthcare system is so bad and there's no evolution. All we have are these immobilizers that just hold something in place. But muscle strength is like a bell curve. So mid-range, you're the strongest. End range, you're the weakest. So why would we not offload the weakest range externally? It's kind of like a shock absorber, like a pad. So think about a compression spring to a distraction spring. So like the one on your car that absorbs force and the one on your garage door that offloads the weight as it lowers, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So it's kind of the same concept, but on our lower body, we have a muscle called the sartorius. So trivia question, if you ever hear what's the longest muscle in the body, that's it.
Sartorius?
So boom.
My penis. It's the biggest muscle in this body.
Your answer needs to be that. But it's a two-joint muscle for the lower body. If we had that for the upper body, then we could offload stress from the medial elbow. But there's a lot of things that'll address just the shoulder, just the elbow. But if you address it in one area, it'll go back to the other one. So, tennis, volleyball, javelin, we have so many athletes using it now, and it's pretty incredible. We've had guys cancel their Tommy John surgery too.
So, right, yeah,
That's
you had
awesome.
said that. So, I have a about to be 10-year-old who has become a pretty good pitcher, and he was starting to feel this pinch in this growth plate on the inside of your elbow. Took a couple weeks off, and once he started throwing, he was starting to feel it again. Maybe a 3 out of 10 on the pain scale if he's telling me the truth. I can't really judge someone else's pain. And a 9 or 10-year-old sometimes is exaggerated. You put him on the table and you were kind of checking out his mobility, and you had said a few things to me. We all compensate. If you're doing an activity, chances are you're compensating somewhere. And a lot of times, to fix certain issues, you have to just turn on certain points, I guess, that are not being used because you've been compensating for that part.
Yeah, that's correct. So from stress, trauma, or overuse, muscles will shut down. And then I use the analogy, if I stab you in the leg, you can still walk out the front door. Your brain just knows don't use those that just had trauma. So that's kind of an extreme example. But if something's been overused, like runners, I had an ultra marathon runner come in. She said her last marathon was 110 miles.
Jeez.
She had multiple stress fractures, ligament tears, and she's complaining about her tight hamstrings. She couldn't pass a single positional muscle test except for her hamstrings. So the hamstrings were the only thing functioning well. And as a matter of fact, they're pulling so damn hard, they're making up for everything else.
Wow.
But that symptom she felt was actually the compensation pattern she needed. Back to your son. So when young athletes go to the doctor, they don't have a thought process. It's kind of see symptom, treat symptom. But if you think about it, if you take time off and then go back to that same activity with that same body, you're going to have the same problem because of the compensation pattern that probably resulted in breakdown at that one area for the overuse injury. So the fact that they don't even look at trunk rotation, how the hips are functioning and foot function, it's really disappointing, but it's also, again, at the major league level. So I've had athletes come in after surgery from, some of the biggest name Tommy John surgeons and shoulder surgeons, And I always ask them, did your PT look at your foot function? Did they check your hip? Did they check trunk rotation? They always say no.
No, why would they? They're just going to look at where is the exact problem, and that's what we're going to attempt to fix.
Yeah, and that's why it's so incredibly disappointing how bad healthcare is. And, sports by definition should be anything not good for your body because you have a whole division called sports medicine. But the fact that they don't understand or have a basic thought process of just because that's where the smoke is doesn't mean that's where the fire is. They're not even looking at what could have potentially caused this injury.
Right.
They don't think about it. They just think, okay, elbow pain, we got to address elbow pain.
Right.
What if it was a shoulder issue? But they just tell you to take time off because they don't know.
So if you become a pitcher, what are the chances of you having a arm issue? The majority, you're going to say, are going to have something?
I'd say it's a very small percentage that don't have any arm issues. And a lot of times those are the guys that when their arm does blow out, they say, I didn't even have any warning signs. But if they've got fraying of that UCL blows out, that's what Tommy John surgery fixes. If you've got fraying over all this time, all this repetitive micro trauma, it's kind of like a bowling ball hanging from a rope. Every day you walk by and hit it with a butter knife in the same spot. You're not going to notice any significant damage or feel any pain.
Right.
But if you do it every day over a certain amount of time or walk through the same area in your grass, it's going to wear down.
That's right.
So the fact that they don't even understand that and there hasn't been anything to offload that stress, I just, kind of sit back and wonder why this has never been done.
Pretty amazing. I mean, my son, while we were there, put on the Kinetic Arm. You have a lot of those for kids and adults. There's a lot on order from what I understand. And my son started throwing, didn't feel nothing.
Was he throwing heat?
I thought he was throwing pretty hard.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, he's got a good arm. And he did it during when he had some batting practice the other day. Last night, wasn't wearing it, obviously, and he went to do a pull-up. And then he said he started feeling something there. Is that something that will never go away now?
It'll go away over time. So the main thing, and the reason he probably felt it during the pull-up, when you're using those forearm flexors, that's what crosses over the medial elbow. So it's called the medial epicondyle. So in older pitchers, you have what they'll call, chronic workload. But if they're throwing faster, even in tennis or any sport, if these forearm flexors get tired, then as the weight of this goes back and the humerus torques forward, you get that dynamic valgus or separation because the elbow is a hinge joint.
Right.
It does flexion extension. So that's why I felt it there. But another huge problem with the healthcare industry, growing pains. If they can wear this to offload arm stress while they have growing pains, I mean, if they have, Seaver's disease, Osgood-Schlatter, so at the knee or the heel, they're losing that ground reaction force. Of course, they're going to compensate with their arm and throw harder. So I'll have parents come in and they'll say, why have these doctors or PTs not explain this to us? Which I ask the same question. It's really disappointing they don't have that basic thought process of, I mean, if you stand there in place and throw a ball as hard as you can versus a walking start, getting more momentum and ground reaction force, yeah, you're going to throw harder when you have better motion. So I'll put them on the table and they can't even rotate back to their throwing side. So why are these athletes and these kids being cleared to throw when they're just going to have the same problem? I guess the doctor gets paid more visits out of it. So
is it the doctor's fault? Doesn't it start like when they go to school to become a doctor? Shouldn't that be taught to the doctors, part of their education?
First, you got to remember a college is a business.
Of course.
They're not that concerned with being on the cutting edge and giving you the best skill set possible. They got to make money.
That's right.
That's why, sports programs are so big. They bring in a lot of money.
And it's just textbook. They just keep reusing the same textbooks. It's cheap.
And it's probably one of those professors that wrote it, and there's, some biased stuff in there that they think is best, but it may not be. But you got to remember, orthopedic surgeons, it's like medieval carpentry. I mean, really, they cut, they chisel, they hammer, they do their job, and then you get passed off to the PT. And it's really disappointing the limited skill set they have because just stretching and smashing, I think surgeons should have to go through every surgery they're going to perform so they have a better understanding of what the surgical outcome should be, what the timeline is, the expectations, and they'll see just how incredibly shitty
That'd be pretty gnarly.
the PT and rehab process is. My pec was ripped off for 2 years. One doctor said, yeah, it's completely ripped off. Another one saying, oh, you'll be fine if you rehab, which if it's not attached, it's probably not going to be fine.
Dude, that hurt.
That seems crazy.
It felt like somebody grabbed a shoe and jumped off the top rope in a wrestling ring and slapped it. That's how hard I thought the pop was in my head, but nobody heard anything.
Wow.
I was in shock. My vision's going this way and I'm sitting down and I'm like, guys, I'm just letting you know I'm going to pass out. I can't really see or hear you. And they're like, no, stay with us. I'm like, well, dude, get me a Gatorade. I'm crashing right now.
Yeah.
And my vision went down to that much. Could barely hear him, had the Gatorade, and then it just kind of opened up. So it's really just kind of went into shock with it.
That's wild.
It was ripped off for 2 years. I had it reattached, and I went through all the physical therapy with somebody they said was really good. So I get, kind of my mobility back, and still can't really do push-ups. Then I get out to Denver to this muscle testing class, and we test that pec major, and I can't even hold a positional contraction. So that takes us back to what good was the physical therapy.
Wow.
We can build a great compensation pattern, but neurologically, that's not even turned on. So we did the palpations, isometrics, then we can hold a contraction. So that's the big problem is people are just concerned with, and in baseball, there's motion capture, right? It's, fancy way of saying it, superficial assumption of gross motor function, which means you've got all this shit flying through space and they're trying to guess and say what the problem is. You have no idea unless you actually test it out, like we did when you came in. I've had all these big aha moments with, the fitness industry and the rehab processes because I've been through it.
Right.
And feeling that, I went through all this PT, did all this corrective exercise, but if neurologically those things aren't firing and they're not functioning, you don't gradually raise that threshold, they're never going to turn back on.
What should people do that want to get fit, that want to, I know this is a big question, but, obviously
it's a 100-part question.
A lot of people are going to be dissatisfied with physical training that they've gotten, with advice that they've received from medical professionals. And, a lot of people are facing a lot of issues out there. What would you suggest as kind of a resource or kind of a direction that people should go in, whether they're just regular guy like me trying to stay in shape or all the way up to an athlete, as far as the fitness industry basically being, compromised? What would you suggest? Is there a silver lining here? Is there a place people can go?
The best solution is what the biggest problem was, and that's simple doesn't sell. So they wanted to sell you all this
I like that.
functional training, right? You got to stand on a BOSU, do a shake weight, do your legs in and out because it's functional, right?
I love shake weights.
We're doing all these motions, but every secondary or challenge past that takes away from the original goal. So when I say that, simple is kind of the solution, if you look at, there's so much incredible data using positional isometrics, which is where you're in one position pushing as hard as you can, and that's the only way you can exert 100% effort or force as it diminishes and not change that position. So it's kind of like doing a drop set, but you can keep pushing in that direction. But there's so much good objective data for how it helps keep elderly people walking with hypertension, with weight loss.
Right.
Because when you're holding that contraction for 20 or 30 seconds, it's kind of like doing a wall sit.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it hhurts.
So imagine that with
That'll make you strong, too.
other areas of your body, though.
Right.
So
you do wall sits or whatever they are.
Yeah.
Positional isometrics are really good, or machines. I do understand why machines have
Like
kind of
hammer
been
strength kind of machines?
Absolutely. This goes back to the trainers that have had come in and want to interview for a job. Their resume looks incredible. They have all these certifications, and they'll say, I don't use machines. Those aren't functional. So what you're saying is you don't understand how to properly use restraint and support to precisely apply force.
Their theory is, free weights is the way to go.
Like I've told a lot of trainers, I'll say, you're not qualified to have an opinion on this topic, is basically what it boils down to. They'll say, well, I've done this, or I think. It's like, we don't want to hear what you think. We want to hear what's been proven and what's going to be best for your client. So machines are incredible tools given, how to use them.
Right.
But it's kind of like, I don't have an open access membership. And people ask why. And I say, well, if you had open access to a mechanic shop, do you know how to fix your car? The pulley systems, the cams, the moment arm of effort, moment arm of resistance, lever arm of effort, lever arm of resistance, knowing the structure of the joint, what muscles cross that, what range you shouldn't go into, and how you can apply more force in safer ranges. So the reason that these machines have kind of been taken out and they're not really trendy, first of all, they cost money. These little pop-up studios that can make a quick buck. It's the fact that, you can be jumping around with your shirt off, having a trendy class in Buckhead, or you can be cute in your Lululemon stuff.
Yeah.
I love Lululemon.
Yeah. So that's
done amazing things.
It's definitely helped a lot that couldn't be helped. That's the thing. So, these gyms that do have the exercise equipment, those are a lot of great pieces. And when we talk about cardio versus strength training, try to go for a minute with a low weight at a slow pace.
Yeah, because when you talk about cardio, really the perceived benefit of cardio, like you said earlier, is that your heart rate is going to be in the fat burning zone for a certain period of time, right? That's the whole idea of doing cardio.
That's the assumption, but as it gets easier,
right,
you're definitely not doing as much. That's why you need the variance. But if you think about it, it's muscle wasting because your bones and muscles respond to force. So think about an astronaut.
Right.
The reason everything atrophied is because there's no force. So we go back to basic 7th grade science with homeostasis, right?
Mm-hmm.
Our body wants to function as efficiently as it can.
Yeah.
So it knows, okay, if I don't have to respond to that force, I don't need this extra muscle or this extra bone density that I have to carry around. And on the other end of the spectrum, you've got the powerlifters and the bodybuilders where, again, the bones and muscle respond to force, and they put a ton into it, and you get that specific adaptation that you're going for.
Right.
So it just kind of depends on your goals. But by doing the cardio, it's just muscle wasting because then your brain says, okay, I don't want to carry around all this extra weight.
Right.
And it's not being challenged. So if you don't use it, you lose it. But
Yeah.
as far as keeping your bone density up, preventing osteoporosis down the road,
Right.
even just basic, cardiovascular health, strength training's great.
Boxing, that type of cardio. Sparring, but whatever, just hitting the bag. Sometimes I take classes. Sometimes I would actually have just a boxing trainer and we would spar and, work on, combinations and stuff. But you see these athletes, these younger athletes, football players come in. They're running drills, ladders, all these, fancy footwork, because you have to be able to move and turn quick. And they'd get in a ring, and I would consider a lot of these guys, you think, oh, well, they're in good shape, because they play a sport. And they'd get in the ring, try to go 3 minutes.
Yeah.
And they'd, just completely done. And so, but I really like that type of cardio.
I do like that. If I'm going to do it, I want it to be hard and fast, but then also you want, interval training. You want to spike it up, let it come back down, spike it up. So when you're doing the boxing or kickboxing, things like that, whether it's, not doing the, beating up the air stuff, but actually hitting something and it's all explosive. Yeah, that's great because you can get your heart rate way up and then let it come back down. You can kind of control the pace. So imagine something like that where it's like a CrossFit where you're in a competitive environment and you just keep going because nobody else is stopping. That's when it gets dangerous. I do like, the benefits of that, assuming, the instructor's not going to injure you. But yeah, I think that type of stuff's great. Now it's not
C-bend.
There has to be progressions.
Stop beating up the air, Kaylee.
Yeah. Quit beating the air.
That air bad guy just got his ass kicked.
Yeah.
The guy in the park doing karate against no one.
Yeah, against no one. His imaginary foe.
That's right.
He wins every
scared.
time. Undefeated.
Yeah.
And jiu-jitsu is like that as well. I mean, the strength aspect of it is huge. And the cardiovascular, like you're saying, with the weight training, when you're trying to hold some weight, that will get your heart rate up. And if you can maintain that throughout a 30, 45-minute, workout, you're getting cardio, right?
Absolutely.
The soreness you feel after you do weight, even with the machine.
Sweet nectar.
Is it bad to be sore? Like, do you have to tear your muscles a little to grow? High reps, light weight, in order for them to get bigger? Should you not do that?
It depends. So I always say the dosage determines the poison. If you're doing a ton of heavy lifting and you're not ready for it, you're going to do a lot more harm than good. As far as neurologically, that's a lot of stress into the nervous system. Like when you go and get a massage and they say, oh, it's the toxins. No, you just beat the crap out of my muscular system and now I'm kind of dizzy. You feel like you're kind of out of it. There's no toxins being released. You beat the crap out of the muscle. So in a workout, you can do the same thing. So you can be setting yourself back by doing too much. So the amount you'd want would be, just enough to stimulate change. But again, that's the huge problem with the fitness industry is, we've got all these preset choreographed workouts.
And it's not a one size fits all.
Right. And there's so many variables that go into it. So back to the strength training, you got to start out easy and then gradually make progressions. So you get those desired adaptations. So that way you can start to handle more time, more load, less rest in between. There's a lot of variables, but even with, the Funzy cardio classes, we've had people come in that develop cardiac issues because they think, oh, I can go to this treadmill class. I'm going to be fine, right? No, their heart rate hasn't been up that high for that long of a time. And now they end up having to go to a cardiologist and they're having issues.
So it could cause permanent damage, not just a one-off, like, okay, I didn't feel well that day, but you could actually cause your cardiovascular system some long-term damage from just like it getting that high one time.
Just from going and doing one treadmill class. And then you got to think too, these thousands of reps. So it's kind of like if you have a bad alignment on your car, you're not going to notice right away. But if you're driving that thing fast across the country, you're going to have some uneven wear on the tires. So it's the same thing with like an elliptical or doing these cardio classes. If you've got something off with your foot function or your hip, and now you're putting these thousands and thousands of reps into it, you're reinforcing that. But if you've got a bad kind of a misalignment with the joints, with the contact surface, you're causing more problems. But it feels good. You got your heart rate up. You got a little badge for the class.
Sweat on. Yeah,
you won the class. Yeah.
You won.
So it's with that and CrossFit and things like that, you may not feel the damage right now, but orthopedically, you're going to feel it.
Mm-hmm.
That's so much stress. It's too much stress, and there's no appropriate progression. So you may not feel it right now, but down the line, you're going to definitely start to feel some aches and pains.
Ben, you're going to have to stop going to aerobics classes.
I know. I just got
leotard.
I know. I just got this new
aerobics.
jazzercise.
He loves an aerobics
membership.
class.
Yeah.
So to wrap things up, I know we all have stuff to do, and you've given so much information that I think is super valuable. So the Kinetic Arm can be purchased at your website,
thekинeticarm.com.
If your kids are, an athlete, and if they're hurt, then definitely check this product out. If they're not hurt, use it as a measure to prevent an injury. And there's a lot of information and data on your website.
Yeah, we've got some great objective data, and even for adults. I mean, we did the testing on adults.
Of course, adults.
But I mean, tennis, javelin, volleyball, pickleball, anything just to stay healthy, because tennis elbow, golfer's elbow, little league elbow, they're so common, but now we have a way where we can actually offload that stress externally.
That's really cool.
It's really amazing. And my son's got a prototype and is loving it. It's funny because he went to his first practice and he put it on. And of course, every kid on his team and every parent's like, what's that? What's that? What is he wearing? He wore it over his shirt this particular time, which, you can wear it under a shirt and it just looks like a sleeve.
Yeah.
It looks like one of those like cooling sleeves kind of. So I'm going to post on the episode description. We'll have all your info of links to you and the Kinetic Arm for anybody that wants to check it out.
Oh, yeah. Thank Jason for coming on. We really appreciate you, bro. And, we actually connected at Jennifer's 40th birthday party recently.
Oh, that's
where you guys connected.
Were you there when the dude was wiping his butt on Ben's sheets upstairs?
I was outside. I heard about it, and it's one of those things I really want to see what happens, but I don't necessarily want to be there just in case there's contact.
Yeah, exactly.
Like I wanted to be at a safe distance. If there was a plexiglass window and I could just observe.
It's not good optics for anybody involved. You can listen to the Man Fuse podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your favorite podcasts. We're also now on WhatsApp. Join the show. You can text or leave a voice message, 770-744-5227. Thanks for hanging out.